Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask NT Wright Anything, the program where we try to answer your questions about Jesus, the Bible, and the life of faith. I'm Mike Bird from Ridley College in Melbourne, joined by
Tom Wright from Wycliffe Hall in Oxford.
Our first question is from Jody Root in Tomar, USA. It's about Paul, his Messiah, and being a child of Abraham. Here's what Jody asks. Our family recently completed the advanced study of Galatians provided by NT Wright online. Good, there's some great courses you can take there. In the last lectures of the series, it seems that Tom Wright stresses that in Galatians, Paul redefines Israel to be the Messiah's people, who are the true children of Abraham. We have heard of Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus. It appears that with Jesus revealing himself, Paul grasps that Jesus is the Messiah and that he is the fulfillment of all promises in the Old Testament. Does this mean that Paul was not a true child of Abraham until Jesus appeared to him? Is it appropriate to say that Paul converted from Judaism to Christianity? We appreciate all your writings and lectures. The Lord has continued to expand our understanding of him and the cultural context of those who wrote the scriptures through this podcast and other resources. Thank you. So, Tom, this is a good one. Conversion. Did Paul convert to Christianity? Are Jews part of the children of Abraham, or is that now transferred to Christians, Tom? What do you have to say to Jody?
I would never use a word like transferred, because that easily goes with an older view which some have held, alas, that God stopped being interested in ethnic Jewish people and decided instead to invest in ethnically Gentile, non-Jewish people. That was never the New Testament's point of view. But my mind goes back to what John the Baptist said when he was warning the crowds who were coming to him for baptism. Don't presume that you can say, we have got Abraham for our father, because God can raise up children to Abraham from these stones. In other words, already for John the Baptist, there seems to be a sense that it really matters to be a child of Abraham, but then it's an open question as to who is really a child of Abraham. It's as though John the Baptist is anticipating what Paul says in Romans 9, verses 6 and following, that not all the children of Abraham are in fact the children of Abraham, not all the ones who are ethnically Judaic are actually the promised seed. Now, Paul then spends 3 chapters teasing out what that means. But for Paul himself, I think I've often thought it's wrong to use the word convert to describe what happened when he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, because Paul was already a very, very devout worshipper of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and a devout student of Torah, and a man of prayer and faith and hope and so on. But what changed for him was realizing that if Jesus of Nazareth really was Israel's Messiah, and the proof of that was that God had raised him from the dead, and here he was alive again, then everything that he had thought before, everything that he prayed before, was from one point of view gloriously fulfilled, from another point of view totally subverted and stood on its head. So the trouble is, when people today talk about somebody being converted, they often assume that this is from either atheism or agnosticism or secularism of one sort or another, and suddenly they get religion. The answer is Paul had a whole lot of religion already, thank you very much. They just get radically refocused. But for Paul, once you realize Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah, then it's impossible for a first century Judean to say, yes, I agree, so-and-so is the Messiah, but never mind, I'm going to do something over on the other side of the picture instead. Once you realize so-and-so is the Messiah, this is the defining moment. That's why 100 years after Jesus, when Rabbi Akiba declared that Simeon ben Kozibar was the son of the star, the Messiah. This didn't mean, here's a messianic experience for anyone who would like to have it, but actually, if you want to go on being following somebody else, that's fine too. No, the answer is, if God has declared this person to be Messiah, this is where the people of God are being redefined, recentered, refocused. So, and actually, all the great Judaic movements of the time, think of Qumran, and actually think of the early rabbis. They had this sense that God is doing a new thing and it's here, therefore not there. From that point of view, to use the dangerous word, the whole idea of supersessionism, God doing something new, is actually a deeply first century Judaic idea. The Qumran people were, in that sense, supersessionist. Not that they were saying God's forgotten the ethnic Jews. It's just God has done a new thing, and this is where God is at work. So then when Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world, I don't think that they're not kind of in a neutral space, his hearers before then, that they are ethnically Judaic, and they are coming and listening to Jesus because he seems to have a message which is what they've been taught to expect and to want, except they weren't expecting it quite like this. But saying you are the salt of the earth immediately is followed by, so watch out in case you stop being salty enough. And if you're the light of the world, then what are you doing putting a tin bucket over the top of it? So there's a challenge to be, in fact, what you are in theory. And I think that comes right through the whole of the New Testament, that the note of a fulfillment, which is also a new day dawning. And if you insist on keeping the curtains shut to keep the daylight out, then don't be surprised if the new day proceeds without you. And that is not, emphatically not, either replacement or, in the normal sense, supersession. It is enlargement. It's God doing what in the prophets and the Psalms he promised. That the princes of the people are joined to the people of the God of Abraham, says the psalmist. And God says to Abraham, in you and in your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So it's simply taking the Old Testament seriously, the Jewish scriptures seriously, and saying these are fulfilled in Jesus and by the Spirit. I hope that's clear. It's a very contentious issue, of course.
Oh, of course. I think that's right, Tom. It's not like Paul was persona non grata before God, and then he became a Christian to become a child of Abraham. I think, he was a child of Abraham by virtue of being Jewish, being, within the covenant, being faithful to God. But God was doing a new thing within Judaism in the Messiah, and it's a case of are you catching up to where God is going, more like that, and joining this new movement of the Spirit in the Messiah.
Right. And so many of the debates that we have in New Testament scholarly circles are about putting together these things of fulfillment at one level and radical innovation at another, and then discovering that the radical innovation was itself promised. There's a saying, my friend Jamie Davis, who's just becoming professor in Aberdeen now.
Yes.
I remember Jamie saying in a seminar, God has acted radically, surprisingly, dramatically, as he always said he would. In other words, that there's that combination of the radical newness and then looking back and saying, oh, well, he did say he would do something like this, however surprising it may be.
But Tom, that line you quoted from John the Baptist, I think was it in Luke 3, where, don't say to yourself, we are sons of Abraham, because, God can raise up children of Abraham from these stones. I mean, this is a bit of a side note. I remember when Dale Allison wrote an article on that passage.
Oh, right.
And he argued it was proof against covenantal nomism. Now, covenantal nomism, for those who don't know, is the idea that God elects all of Israel by grace and works keep you in. Dale Allison argued that verse was kind of a counterpoint to it. Now, we can't do that right now, but I think that might be a great bonus episode for us one day to do. For those who don't know, every now and then Tom and I record a bonus episode, or in fact once a week we put them out, where we do these additional episodes on Ephesians or hot topics. But that might be a good one, covenantal nomism and its value.
Sure.